So a few people have contacted me to ask me if I'm aware of this new painting from Van Gogh that has been recovered. I've even just had a phone call from my girlfriend telling me the same thing. I am aware of it. I was even alerted by people on Patreon, also on YouTube. And so I guess in order to stop all the messages saying, do you know about it? I think it's probably necessary to do a video about it. It has made world news. The story has appeared in the New York Times, Al Jazeera, CNN, NPR, BBC, local news here in South Africa, I'm sure all over the place. But what I want to share with you guys is something that you probably don't know. For example, who is the woman in that portrait? Who is the woman in that original portrait? It's just titled Portrait of a Peasant Woman, right? But that is actually Gordina de Groot. And villagers, when Van Gogh painted that picture, he was living with his parents in Newnan, and he probably painted that picture sometime in March or April 1885. But villagers accused Vincent of having an affair with her, even though he denied this. Well, those who've been following my Van Gogh letters will be thinking, I think, that on the likelihood that this is actually true. The other thing that is quite interesting with that particular portrait was that Gordina de Groot was one of the characters who appears in Van Gogh's early masterpiece. It's really the very first oil painting that he produced that can be regarded as a seminal work of his, and that is the Potato Eaters. And if you look carefully, you can actually see her as one of the figures in the Potato Eaters, and that was also painted April-May 1885. Now, I think the point to emphasize here is that Van Gogh didn't then immediately paint the self-portrait on that particular painting. So he didn't paint Gordina de Groot and then sort of immediately or a few days later paint the self-portrait. What appears to have happened is that he sent this particular portrait of Gordina de Groot to his brother Theo in Paris, and he then retrieved that painting when he went to Paris, and that was when he painted on the back of it, right? So it seems when he was in Paris in 1887, that was when he actually painted on the back of this particular canvas. So the date of the Gordina de Groot artwork is probably sometime in 1885. And then the date that he did this self-portrait is probably around about 2 years later, somewhere around the summer of 1887. It is actually an extraordinary piece that has come to light. So 130-something years later, you have this situation where we now have a brand new artwork to add to the collection that we already have of one of the most beloved, expensive and popular artists in the world. The other thing that is quite interesting is if we go to the letters of Vincent van Gogh written from Newnan in April 1885, he makes a reference to Theo where he writes, quote, "The head I painted today is, I think, as good as the one with the big white cap you have," right? That was sent on the 1st of April 1885 to Theo. There's also another reference in mid-March 1885. This is the time frame when he was painting the Potato Eaters, where he started it off saying, "Some of the heads I promised you are finished, but they are not quite dry yet. As I wrote to you already, they were painted in a dark cottage, and they are studies in the real sense of the word." And then there's yet another reference on the 11th of April 1885, where he writes, "Enclosed you will find 2 scratches of a few studies I made, while at the same time I'm again working on those peasants around the dish of potatoes. I've just come home from this cottage and have been working on it by lamplight, though I began it by daylight this time." In a letter from the 13th of April 1885, also written from Newnan, Vincent writes to his brother, quote, "When I say that I'm a painter of peasant life, that is a fact, and it will become increasingly apparent to you in the future that I feel at ease as one. It was not for nothing that I spent so many evenings musing by the fire in their homes with the miners and the peat cutters and the weavers and the peasants, unless I was working too hard for that. By continually observing peasant life at all hours of the day, I've become so involved in it that I rarely think of anything else. End quote. And so this was a period where Van Gogh was fascinated by the poor, by the rural worker, by the blue-collar worker, the struggle, the human struggle. He found that more compelling than what we do today, the glitzy, glamour, high life of celebrities and the rich and famous. He was more interested in poverty, in the Dickensian narrative of struggle. Now, the way that this portrait of Van Gogh came to light was through an X-ray. They didn't literally remove the cardboard. The cardboard was actually placed on the back of the canvas to make sure that the canvas wouldn't tear. That was really the reason. And obviously, the person who applied the cardboard probably saw this canvas, the other side of the canvas, and thought, well, the most prominent work isn't the self-portrait, it is what is on the other side of that. So will it be possible to resurrect the self-portrait? Well, it might be. I doubt whether the original portrait will be able to be recovered completely. You can see there's some distortion there. But in terms of some of the features there, you can see he's got a handkerchief around his neck. You can see his eye. You can see he's wearing a hat. Also appears that he's wearing a beard. But I'm not sure whether they'll be able to recover absolutely everything. But there is something Shroud of Turin-ish about it, isn't it? There's this sort of ghostly apparition of Van Gogh appearing on the other side of a woman that he apparently had an affair with. In any event, if you're new to this channel, I do cover the letters of Vincent van Gogh. Right now we are busy with the year 1882, really the summer of 1882. It's quite a momentous year as well, where he had a falling out with some of his artist friends, as well as with his family. And now the question was he going to fall out with his brother as well? If you're interested in the coverage of that, it's something I do every Wednesday and also every Sunday on this channel. There are already 21 episodes, and if you're interested in having a look at some of them, I'll put a link to the playlist in the description. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.